Hello there, everyone. This is the Fantastic at Munipoli Matters on Substack. And once again, we're doing another series of interviews with various candidates running municipally in the October municipal elections in Ontario. I'm very pleased to welcome Kojo Damptey from Hamilton. He is running for city councillor in Ward 14. He registered on May 2nd, I believe, on the first day that he was allowed to register. And I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Damptey here this evening as we're recording. Kojo, how are you?
Good. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. I'm very glad to be able to interview various people who are running for office. New faces, I would say, especially in a city like Hamilton. And very glad you took the time to talk with me this evening. So I think best way to start off is I'm looking at your website, and you have a short biography about yourself. So why don't you tell people who Kojo Damptey is? Just a little backstory about yourself, and go ahead.
Yeah, that's a a very interesting question. I'll try and keep it short. I think one of the things that has always inspired me is to be part of the community that you live in, and how you can contribute to the community that you live in. So I moved to Hamilton in 2001, and I've been here since. And I've tried to be in community, work for community, and support anything that happens here in Hamilton. So I've done that in numerous ways. I used to be part of the Hamilton Musicians Advisory Team that would advise the city of Hamilton around issues pertaining to the music industry here in Hamilton. We managed to craft some policy around fair wages for musicians. We also managed to establish loading docks for musicians at music venues. So that's something that I've done. I also teach at McMaster as a sessional instructor. And my current position is I'm the executive director at the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion. And there, during the pandemic, we talked about establishing COVID-19 vaccine clinics for marginalized communities that were at higher risk of contracting COVID. So we're able to establish that and vaccinate over 1,000 Hamiltonians. And we also drafted a policy document called Just Recovery Hamilton that came up with over 150 recommendations for the city of Hamilton to now think about how the pandemic should give us lessons about how we structure municipal governing and how we serve various residents in Hamilton. So those are all the things that I've been a part of. And running for council is just another aspect of being involved in community and serving the community and working with the community.
I see. So you see running for city council as sort of an extension to what you've already been doing in the community for all these years. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, that is exactly it.
Right. So I'm looking at your biography. It says here you said you moved to Canada in 2001, and you've lived in a number of areas around Hamilton. See, you were in the Ainsley Wood neighborhood in Ward 1, and then you lived in the Oakwood area in Ancaster, and then after you graduated from McMaster, you moved to Gibson in Ward 3, and you're currently living in Ward 14. Am I correct?
No, so right now I used to live in Ward 14. I'm about 400 meters away from Ward 14. And so, again, the fact that I've been able to live in various sections of our city allows me that vantage point to talk about some of the issues that our city is currently facing. I've done lots of work also in Ward 14. During the pandemic, we started Mountain Mutual Aid that provided food and health products to various communities on the West Mountain and on the whole Hamilton Mountain. We were able to work with over 100 families. So for me, as you said, running for council is an extension of the work that I've already been doing, and also to make sure that we're changing the systemic outlook of how a municipality should be interacting with residents.
That's a very good point you brought up, because I think a couple of my questions right now are going to lead into more about governance at the city, because it seems if you've been paying attention to what's going on at Hamilton City Hall politics, it's I see you smiling there. I think it's an understatement to say it's not been the most high quality sort of performance we've been seeing from our elected officials. For those of you outside of Hamilton who are not aware, Mr. Damptey, the ward he is contesting, is currently held by a city councillor that has been in the news currently for many would say the wrong reasons. But I want to just get back into governance here. It seems that what I've noticed when the nomination period started, there was a very interesting incident. You, as well as some of the other candidates that first registered, after you submitted your nomination papers, you were told you could not be on City Hall property in order to have a press conference. So you were all forced outside onto the sidewalk. So you were technically off city property in order to introduce yourself to the public. Who am I, etc. And it wasn't just you, it was other candidates. I believe Keaton Loomis was running for mayor. He was forced to do the same thing. But this incident just sort of gives me some indication that there's something very awkward going on in terms of City Hall administration and its relationship to the people, or at least specifically people who are seeking to be elected to the local council. I know governance is such a broad scope here, but can you explain to me what you feel needs improvement at Hamilton City Hall at the moment?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is we need new voices. So if you take a look at the current makeup of council, you have 4 councillors who are serving or just finished their first term. The rest of them have been there for decades. We're talking, 10 years, 16 years, 12 years. I think the longest serving councillor, Councillor Tom Jackson, has been there since 88. And to give you context, in 88, I was 5 years old. So that's how long he's been in. And I think, let me prefix this statement. I think there's nothing against the law it's not against the law to run for office in perpetuity. However, from and I'm not even speaking politically, just from a leadership point of view, it is important to have turnover, right, in any form of leadership, because what eventually happens is that ideas get stagnated, right? New perspectives are not brought in. And so when you look at it from a leadership point of view, the fact that you have people that are there for 20 years, 30 years is also doing a disservice to the city. Now, let's look at it politically. There are certain decisions, right, that need to be made, and certain changes that need to be made. And if you have people that have been there for decades and decades that are not listening, that are not open to different perspectives of how we move a municipality forward, then they become the barrier. And that is what we are seeing here in Hamilton. When we want to expand transit, these same councillors don't want to come up with new ideas. When we want to talk about the environment, these same councillors are hiding information from the public about the 24 billion liter spillage in Coots Paradise. So again, these are the things that contribute to sort of the bad governance and sort of the lack of decision making that we need at a municipality level, especially with the things that we are facing, climate change, just coming off a pandemic, the housing crisis that we are seeing, how we need to transform our cities so that we're not dependent on cars that emit greenhouse gas effects. We're not dependent on expanding urban sprawl. That is also detrimental to the taxpayer as well. So these are the things that we need to look at, and new voices and new people like myself are open to doing that.
That's a very interesting point. And I'll just say it right here. Current Ward 14 Councillor Terry Whitehead did in the past vote against LRT, for example. He also represents a ward that is, I believe, geographically speaking, more in the sort of, I guess in the, maybe you could explain to me, in the mountain area of Hamilton. It's more a suburban area. And there seems to be always this sort of narrative of there's a divide between councillors who are from the old part of Hamilton, like the downtown area, for example, and then more from the outer suburban area, as well as some of the former towns that were amalgamated back in 2000. Like, is this divide like contributing to sort of like this governance issue? Like, has amalgamation not worked for Hamilton as originally it should have been?
Well, I think it's a complicated answer. But what I can say is, yes, there's that divide. But I think what we need are new leaders that bring down that divide. Because at the end of the day, we are one city. It doesn't matter whether somebody is living in Ward 14, Ward 3, Ward 15. We still live in one city. So let's take public transit, for example. You know, public transit downtown, people have easy access. But in a ward like Ward 12 or 13, specifically Ancaster, if you're in Ancaster and you need to get downtown or you need to get to the west side of the city, it can take about an hour and a half. You can go to Toronto and back if there's no traffic in an hour and a half. So if you're looking at transit from a citywide perspective, why should residents take an hour and a half to get from one side of the city to another? So this is why, and that divide needs to be demystified or be broken down so that we can start looking at how do we serve all the residents in Hamilton, whether you're in Ward 14, whether you're in Ward 12, whether you're in Ward 1, whether you're in Ward 3. And those are the things that we have to look at. And the previous councillors or the current councillors play on that divide to not get stuff done. And residents are tired of seeing that.
So you mentioned, I think you had done some work in affordable housing, especially during the pandemic period. And affordable housing, I think that's an issue that is not just in Hamilton, but a number of communities across Ontario, across Canada. I was looking at a new report from, I believe you may be familiar with this group, I Elect Hamilton. So 45% of Hamilton renters are living in unaffordable housing. So that's a very high number. That's pretty much exemplifies an affordable housing crisis. Now, there's been a number of policies have been proposed. One of them I found interesting that Hamilton City Council, I thought surprisingly took recently, was that to freeze the urban boundary within the city rather than doing the opposite, and so contributing what many would say a more sprawling development. We just went through a provincial election where the PC government has been re-elected. They have said that they are not necessarily against it, but more like, oh, we want to review it later. I believe the local MPP Donna Skelly has said something similar. Now, this could be problematic for the city now that they've taken this view to freeze the urban growth boundary. But, as we all are very familiar, municipalities are at the whim of the provincial government at times. So it seems that the province could rescind this freezing of the boundary if they so choose. If that happens, like, are there any sort of policy ideas you want to put forward to voters as to how we can solve this affordable housing crisis? In conjunction with the freezing of the urban boundary or not?
Well, first off, big shout out to Stop Sprawl Hamilton. They are the ones that organized residents across the city. We had about over 20,000 people. And that is unprecedented when you are talking about local residents deciding what they want to see from their municipality. So big shout outs to Stop Sprawl Hamilton, Environment Hamilton, and all the other organizations, Hamilton 350. I think that decision to stop sprawl is a good decision. And it's also a good financial decision, right? I think that's the points that's been missing. It's a good financial decision, it's a good environmental decision, and it's a prudent decision to help get us to solving or mitigating the housing crisis. So when we talk about housing, we need to realize that there's a spectrum of housing that we need to provide: emergency shelters, transitional housing, social housing, affordable rental housing, and affordable home ownership. The discussion or the discourse around housing tends to focus on affordable home ownership. The average selling price of a house in Ward 14 is 800K, right? Hamilton, the average selling house in Hamilton is over $1 million, right? So what is missing? Well, we are missing social housing. We're missing affordable rental housing. And this is where freezing the urban boundary comes into play. Now, when you have a fair urban boundary, now the city can mandate, or using some of its levers, whether it's zoning or what have you, bylaws, inclusionary zoning, and what have you, to then make sure that we are having a good stock around social housing and affordable rental housing. The city of Hamilton has city housing. We also need to invest in city housing. We also need to look at other ways, other cooperative housing models, land trust models that allow for people to take ownership of the housing that they need, right? So I think when we talk about freezing the urban boundary, coming up with other solutions, these are some of the things that we have to do. And we need to focus on that middle, right? Social housing, affordable rental housing. Those are the key things. But not everybody has the money to purchase an $800,000 house.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, we're in a time where, like, I'm a single guy, and I was told recently that I don't qualify with a single income. So, and I do it pretty well on my own. So it just seems baffling to me that we've come to this point where just basic decent housing or just the basic right to housing seems kind of unreachable to many people. I guess another issue I want to look into is transit. It seems the LRT question has for now been settled. I think it seems even the provincial and the federal government has come to the same conclusion that the LRT should be built. And do you have any ideas on, like, what further sort of ideas to expand on public transit options in Hamilton, so people are not always driving the car? Not that there's anything wrong with driving a car, but it's just it's just the ability to provide more options for people, so they have, like, other methods? Like, is there any ideas you have that you want to take on during your campaign while you're meeting with the people?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. The city of Hamilton has a transportation plan. They approved it in 2018. And in there, one of the main priorities is to reduce single occupancy usage, right? So first off, and I mentioned this earlier on, public transit is important. When you have dependable, well invested, well resourced public transit, that means that you're going to have a better city overall, right? So, one of the first things that we need to do is to make sure that we have a dependable and affordable public transit across the entire city, right? It doesn't matter which ward you live in, you should be able to say, you know what, I want to hop on the bus. It should take either 10 or 15 minutes for a bus to show up, right? There are certain areas where we have buses that come every 30 minutes, every hour, every 40, 45 minutes. That doesn't cut it, because if I have to, if it's going to take me an hour or an hour and a half to get downtown when I live up on the mountain, why am I going to take public transit, right? So I think we need to invest in our public transit. We need to make sure that we reduce the frequency 10 to 15 minutes, right? We also need to provide accessible public transit that allows for seniors to also access public transit, right? The other thing is we also need to find different modes of transportation. We have bike lanes, but we need to make sure that it's not just a paint on the ground that says this is a bike lane. We need protected bike lanes, and we need our city of Hamilton is developing what they call a complete street review that allows for you to have a path for pedestrians, a path for bike lanes, and a path for people that might be using other mobility devices. So I think those are the investments that we need to make, and that will give people the confidence to then say, you know what, I want to walk, I want to bike, I want to take public transit. And that's how we ensure that we have a dependable public transit system. And that will also make our city better physically and health-wise as well. So these are the things that we need to accomplish, and I'm committed to doing that here in Hamilton.
Another question I have is, I'm always curious about how city finances are like sustainable, because cities seem to have only a very limited number of avenues to raise revenue, right? Property taxes, the primary one. There are some user fees, but I think 80 to 90% of city revenues come from property taxes. So you have a very limited pool of resources in order to do all the things, provide all the services that a city can afford to. Looking around the world, there are cities that have like much different methods of financing with the higher orders of government, if you will. They have their own ability to tax or raise user fees, or have much more stable financial arrangements with either the upper level of government. What do you think that a city could improve on in terms of having ability to raise funds? Like, are there other avenues that cities should rely on in the long term other than just property taxes?
100%. Actually, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that. So this is an item that hasn't been discussed. So I'll give you two examples. So first off, as you know, the city of Toronto has its own act with the province. So they are one of the municipalities that can come up with their own tax system, and I think they've done that. I don't know the specific tax, but they have done that. If people read some of the platforms from the provincial election, I think one of the under the municipality section for the NDP, they did talk about allowing municipalities to look into charter cities. So giving municipalities the opportunity to talk to the province to say, hey, what are the options that are available to municipalities to bring in extra money to either develop whatever priorities that they see fit. So I think that's something that municipalities can look at. I know that there's the FCM Federation of Municipalities, and then the I might get the acronym right, the AMTO I forget, but
I think you mean AMO, the Association of
yes,
Municipalities of Ontario.
yes, there you go. Yes, so those are associations that can also help municipalities to talk to the province to say, hey, look, property taxes are not cutting it out, and we need to reduce the burden of people, of our residents, so we can have multiple ways of coming up with innovative and progressive ways of taxing that allow us to do some of the things that we want to do.
Okay, good answer. I think I'll, as we are winding down here, I think I'll close off this interview with a couple more fun questions, if you will. You've mentioned you moved to Canada in 2001. You've lived in Hamilton for a number of years, so you're definitely much more familiar with Hamilton than I am. Is there any like, if I was to go to Hamilton like tomorrow, what's the best restaurant you would recommend, whether it's in Ward 14 or whether it's in anywhere else in Hamilton, even if it's like 400 meters outside of Ward 14? That's
Yeah, you're gonna get me in trouble here.
oh no.
No, like in the last 10 years, I would say Hamilton there's lots of small businesses, restaurants. You go down James Street. James Street has changed so much. King William Street has also changed. You go to Ottawa Street. There's just so many places now. I don't want to mention
Okay, well,
one spot, but what I can do though is, if you need vinyl, the one place to go is Dr. Disc
okay.
on James and Wilson. That I can say, that I know, because Dr. Disc is one of the best vinyl stores in Hamilton. So that I can give.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you could name a favorite restaurant, because you don't want to play favorites. Is there like a local business in your ward that you wanted to give a shout out to? And so,
Well, in my ward though, there's a long time mom and pop business, Sweet Paradise Catering. They have lots of desserts, lots of food. So yeah, so if you like desserts, you can definitely check out Sweet Paradise Catering.
yeah, I do have a sweet tooth on occasion that flares up from time to time. So when that comes up, I'll definitely know where to go if I'm in the Hamilton area.
Okay.
Well, but thank you very much, Kojo, for taking the time to speak with me. This is Kojo Damptey. He is the candidate for City Councillor in Hamilton, running in Ward 14. The election is on October 24th. Just for another important day, August 19th at 2 p.m. is the deadline for candidates to register. And, yeah, democracy only works when there are choices and it's vibrant and there are new voices coming in. So I'm very grateful that Kojo, you took the time to speak with me today. so we can just give you some time to introduce yourself to not only just my viewers, but Hamiltonians as well. So thank you very much, and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for doing this. I think there are not enough people that cover municipal politics, and municipal politics plays a huge part in everybody's life. So thank you very much. I hope there are other candidates that you get to talk to across the province, and hopefully they have conversations with you, and I will encourage them to do so as well. And if folks want to find out more information,
Yeah, where can people find you?
about
Yeah.
yeah, about my campaign, you can definitely we have our website is kojoforward14.ca, and then you can find us on all social media platforms, Kojo Forward 14.
All right. Thank you very much, Kojo. And this is Fantastic from Munipoli Matters. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good night.
Thanks.